We're in Psalm 18. We'll spend a few minutes here today. We left off yesterday with David saying, "For by thee I have run through a troop, and by my God I have leaped over a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in him. For who is God save the Lord? Who is a rock save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength and maketh my way perfect." I love verse 32. It's God that girdeth me with strength. So David in this section is confessing again his own weakness, but celebrating God's massive strength and explaining how the two work together. God took a weak David and wrapped him in divine, providential strength, and then directed him. He made his way perfect. He helped him take right steps. He helped him get through that troop that was against him and over that wall that was blocking him. This is what God does. Verse 33 is where we pick up today. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and he setteth me in high places. Now a hind is a deer or a doe. And in the Holy Land, I've expressed it before, there's just a lot of rocky land. There's a lot of cliffs and crags and mountainous rocky areas. And in those areas, there's wildlife. And that wildlife knows how to climb. What he's referring to here is a sure footedness, a kind of stability in motion. He's going back to the idea of verse 29, I've run. David is running. He was running for his life, but now he's running his race. He's running the race God set before him. He is being the light God lit in verse 28. And I think he's looking back and looking forward. I think he's remembering all that God delivered him from. But I think he's looking forward at the challenges that he's yet to face or that he is facing. And I think he's testifying to you and to me, but I think he's also preaching to himself. I think he's saying, the same God that got me through the troop and got me over the wall is still girding me with strength. And he's still making my way perfect. He is still strengthening and establishing and stabilizing my feet, my steps. This is so beautiful and so powerful. David knows he's taking steps as a king, and in his life and with his family, and he knows that he wants to follow God. He knows he wants God's strength as he leads this nation of Israel, and as he faces all the enemies he's yet to face, all the enemies he has faced, all those yet to face, and all the challenges of being the king that God called him to be. This next section, he's going to really talk about how God has enlarged him. On its own, it almost sounds like he's gloating. But in the context of, no, this is God's doing, he's really glorying in God and how God subdued his enemies and gave David a large influence and a large platform and the privilege and opportunity to serve his nation. So he is really, as a leader, putting his trust in God that his feet, his steps, his direction is set by God, and that God is going to give him a sure-footedness in vulnerable places, that his feet won't slip, that he won't fall down those rocky places of leadership or of life. And he says, God sets me in high places. High places are places where the view is clear. High places are places of perhaps authority. It's a place of elevated worship. So David again is celebrating God's presence and saying, on my journey, God's elevated me, God's valued me, God's brought me into his presence. He teacheth, verse 34, he teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken in my arms. God called David to fight. God led David into some wars, and God strengthened him, wrapped him, girded him in strength, and enabled him to fight, to war for his nation. And what he's saying here is God did that. God taught my hands how to fight, so that, now this is interesting, a bow of steel is broken in mine arms. A bow of steel, the word steel is simply an ancient word for metal or copper. Obviously, it's the different kind of steel than we have today, right? And what he's saying is this idea of being broken. Now, when I read it, I think, okay, so he's able to break the bow. The idea that he's really, the sense of it is that he's taming the bow. Okay, the bow is broken before him. Okay, like a horse is broken by its master. You might say this, if you ever played a musical instrument, that you practiced, you learned, you worked on the skill, and eventually the instrument was broken in your hands. It could do what you told it to do. And David's saying, God taught my hands to war so that a bow of steel is broken in my arms. How does this all tie together? It ties together this way. God led David. God established his steps and his feet. His assignment, his candle, verse 28, was in God's hands. And he taught David how to do the things he led him to do. Now, in this case, it's war. In my case, in your case, it'll likely be different, okay? But he will teach us to do the things he wants us to do. I used to play piano a lot, and I know this, that God, you work at that, you work at that, you work at that, but it's God that gives your hands the ability to figure out those keys. I remember when Pastor Lance at our church started playing guitar and leading singing, he didn't think he could do it. And I said, just trust the Lord to help you move forward in this. And God's given him tremendous skill, tremendous ability. And anybody that knows such skill or such enablement would have to really say, I don't know how I'm able to do this. I mean, I worked hard at it, I practiced, but it's more than that. And what it is it's God teaching us to do what he has called us to do. With God's calling comes God's enabling. You know what? I'm going to leave it there for right now. I hope you'll think about the steps you're taking today. And I hope you'll trust that God is girding you with strength, making your way perfect, that he's making your steps sure and strong and secure, and that you realize as you follow him, he's elevating you. He is going to bring you into his presence and into his purposes, and he's going to teach you to do what he calls you to do. And he's going to give you the resources. He's going to tame resources like the bow in David's arms. He's going to take the resources that he puts in your disposal, and he's going to tame them in your hands so that you can use them for the purposes he calls you to. What a great thought today.